The canoe was found by a local fisherman. He saw it at dawn, a dark gash against the green riverbank. It wasn't a log. It was military grade, a ghost from another world, wedged violently between two moss-covered rocks. The fisherman approached, his own small boat cutting silently through the black water. He called out in his native tongue. No answer. He called out again, louder this time. Only the deafening buzz of insects replied. He pulled alongside. The canoe was pristine. No damage to the hull, no signs of a struggle with the rapids. Inside, the supplies were neatly packed, almost untouched. Sealed MREs, state-of-the-art medical kits, brand new coils of rope. 2 expensive carbon fiber paddles were laid carefully across the seats. Everything was there, except the people. 20 men, an entire expedition team, vanished into thin air. They had pushed off from a remote outpost 2 months earlier, heading deep into a sector of the Amazon marked on maps as "Here Be Dragons." Their mission was legendary, insane, to find Akator, the fabled lost city of gold. They were led by Commander Thorn, a man whose reputation was as fearsome as the jungle itself, a decorated veteran with an obsessive gleam in his eye. His second in command was Lieutenant Rojas, younger, sharper, a man who trusted data, not legends. And under them, 18 men caught in the middle, geologists, ex-special forces, and local guides who were paid a fortune to keep their mouths shut. They were supposed to be back in 6 weeks. They never came back, not a single one. The official report was a joke, a single page that said, "Lost to the elements," a tragic accident. The jungle had simply swallowed them whole. Case closed. But the fishermen found something else in that canoe, tucked under a seat, wrapped in oilcloth as if to protect it. A single page, torn from a diary. The paper was stiff, stained with something dark and rust-colored. The handwriting was a frantic scrawl, the pen digging so deep into the page it almost tore through. This wasn't a record of their journey. It was a final, desperate warning. The first line read, "He is not leading us to a city. He is leading us to a grave." The words were underlined 3 times, a black slash of ink. Further down, the writing became more erratic, the letters trembling. "The men are sick, not the fever. It's in their minds. They whisper in their sleep about a woman made of gold." Then, a chilling entry that marks the point of no return. Rojas confronted him last night. He says the map is a lie, that Thorn is mad. I saw them after. Knives were drawn. Half the men went with Rojas. And at the very bottom of the page, a final, terrifying sentence, circled over and over again until the ink bled into a black hole. "The eyes in the trees are not animals. They are watching us die." This page changes everything. It rips the official story to shreds. This is not a story of an accident. It's a minute-by-minute account of a mutiny, a complete breakdown of civilization, deep in a place where the rules of the world don't apply. What happened on that river? What did they find that broke 20 hardened men? The government sealed the records. The families were told to stop asking questions. But this diary page is the one piece of truth that escaped the jungle's grasp. We have spent the last 6 months investigating this case, speaking with sources who were silenced, analyzing Thorn's disturbing past missions, and digitally enhancing this very page. What we've uncovered is a conspiracy far darker than a simple lost expedition. It's a story of greed, obsession, and something ancient that was woken from its slumber. To join us on this investigation, to see the classified evidence we've gathered, and help us piece together the final violent days of Thorn's crew, you need to subscribe to the channel right now. Hit that button and the notification bell, because you will not want to miss what comes next. This mystery has been buried for over a decade, but we are about to dig it up and expose every last lie. Now, to truly understand how this elite team could completely disintegrate, how a decorated commander could lose his men, not to caimans or disease, but to each other, we have to go back to the very beginning, before the first paddle hit the water, before the first sign of madness infected the crew. We have to look at the one single fatal mistake they made. A catastrophic error in judgment that didn't just doom their mission, it guaranteed that no one would ever come out alive. It all started with the map that wasn't just a guide, it was a curse. This wasn't a military chart. It wasn't government issued. It was old parchment, brittle and yellow, smelling of dust and delusion. A hand-drawn map recovered from the personal effects of a prospector who went into that same jungle a century ago and never came out. He was searching for a lost city. His journal was filled with mad ramblings about shadows that walked and trees that whispered. But his map showed a secret river, a shortcut, a path that would shave weeks off the official route. Commander Thorn saw the map, and he saw glory. The official route was long, it was safe, it was boring. This map? This was a legacy. His second in command, a pragmatic soldier named Riggs, saw only death. He laid the official naval charts on the briefing table. They were detailed, they were reliable, they were based on satellite imagery. "Sir, this is the proven way," Riggs insisted, his finger tracing the thick blue line. "The channels are marked. We know what's there. The man who drew this other map died in there. His journal is incoherent." Thorn just smiled, a predator smile. He tapped the old parchment. "The man was a failure, Riggs. He didn't have our training, he didn't have our boat. He had a mule. We have an engine. Proven ways are for followers. Legends are made by taking risks." The decision was made. Thorn's ambition sealed their fate before they even boarded the boat. They planned for a quick journey. They packed light on rations. They packed light on medical supplies. They packed heavy on scientific equipment and cameras to document their historic shortcut. They were going to be famous. For the first 5 days, Thorn looked like a genius. The secret river was real. The water was deep. They were making incredible time, slicing through the green silence. The men cheered him. They laughed at Riggs and his boring charts. "Hey, Riggs," one of them shouted over the engine's roar. "At this rate, we'll be sipping cold beer before your official route would have even cleared the delta." Riggs said nothing. He just cleaned his rifle, his face a mask of stone. They were untouchable. Then, on the 6th day, they reached the coordinates for Aguilar's Post, a trading village marked clearly on the old map, a place to restock food and water. The men grew quiet with anticipation. They could almost taste fresh fruit. Thorn cut the engine. The boat drifted to a stop. There was no village. There was no trading post. There was nothing. Just an impenetrable wall of swamp and the deafening buzz of a million insects. The laughter was gone. The first whispers began. "Where is it?" a young soldier asked, his voice cracking. Thorn stared at the map, his confidence wavering for the first time. He checked his compass. He checked the map again. It must have been washed away, a flood. But the men looked at each other. They looked at the ancient trees, thicker than cars. No flood had been here in 1,000 years. They knew. The map was wrong. And then the river began to fight back. The deep channel on the map became a shallow, mud-choked stream. The next day, the propeller screamed as it hit a hidden rock, snapping a blade. Now they were at half speed. Soon, they had to get out and drag the boat through thick, foul-smelling sludge that sucked at their boots. Leeches covered their legs. The straight path shown on the parchment became a tangled maze of dead-end tributaries. They would travel for hours hacking through vines with machetes, only to find themselves back where they started, recognizing a strangely shaped dead tree. They were burning fuel, they were burning energy, but most importantly, they were burning time. The shortcut was now a prison. every wrong turn took them deeper. Turning back was no longer an option. They didn't have the supplies for the long journey around. The only way was forward, deeper into the lie. The men stopped looking at the jungle as the enemy. They started looking at their commander. They looked at the heavy crates of cameras taking up space where extra food and medicine should have been. The resentment became a low, constant murmur. They didn't fear the caimans in the water anymore. They feared the man who led them into it, the man with the cursed map. The first ration cuts came on day 10. Thorn announced it like a simple change in logistics, his voice too loud in the oppressive silence. "We conserve energy," he said. "We'll be there in 2 days." No one believed him. They ate their half portions in silence, the tiny piece of dried meat feeling like gravel in their mouths. The hunger was a new crew member. It was patient. It sat in their bellies and whispered, a constant gnawing ache that frayed their nerves raw. Men grew dizzy while pulling the boat. Their hands trembled. They started looking at the heavy sealed crates of camera equipment with a deep burning hatred. That was their food. That was their medicine. And then the fever started. It began with Martinez, the youngest, a single shiver in the suffocating heat. Then his skin became slick with sweat. By nightfall, he was delirious, thrashing in his hammock, his eyes wide with a terror that saw things no one else could. He screamed at the canopy above, "They're watching! Don't let them in! The roots are pulling me down!" Thorn dismissed it. Swamp fever. He'll sweat it out. But they all knew. They had a handful of quinine pills, enough for one man, maybe two. The rest of the space in the medical crate was filled with film canisters. They watched Martinez burn, and they knew his fate was a preview of their own. The paranoia was a contagion. The next night, another man, Diaz, woke everyone up with a yell. He was pointing a trembling finger at the riverbank. "Did you see it? A man standing by the trees." They saw nothing, but they all looked. They all felt it, the feeling of being watched. The jungle wasn't empty. It had eyes. Soon others saw things, a flicker of movement at the edge of their vision, faces in the gnarled bark of the trees. The whispers turned against each other. A lost fishing hook became a theft. A dropped canteen was sabotage. Riggs had to pull two men apart when one accused the other of hoarding a biscuit. A knife was drawn. Blood was nearly spilled over a crumb. Military discipline dissolved into a sullen truce. Salutes became lazy, then disappeared entirely. The team was rotten from the inside out. Thorn seemed oblivious, or maybe he just refused to see it. He spent his days staring at the cursed map, his finger tracing lines that didn't exist. He'd shout orders, his voice cracking with a desperate optimism. "Full speed ahead, we're close now, I can feel it." But the engine only sputtered, and the men just stared at him with hollow eyes. He wasn't a commander anymore. He was the prophet of a failed religion. The men stopped talking to Thorn. They started talking to Riggs, in hushed tones away from the commander. "We have to turn back," one would say. "There's nothing here." Another would add, "He's going to kill us all." Riggs would just nod, his face unreadable. He cleaned his rifle. He watched Thorn. He waited. Martinez died on the 13th day. It wasn't quiet. He died clawing at his own throat, screaming about the things with no faces that were wearing the faces of the crew. They had to hold him down. They wrapped his body in a tarp and sank it in the brown water. There were no prayers. There was only a terrifying thought that passed between the men in their silent glances. Better him than me. They were feeding the river. The next day, they found the camp. It was almost invisible, swallowed by the green. A rotted canvas shelter, looking like shed skin. A rusted tin cup. And a small, leather-bound book lying half buried in the mud. It was the prospector's journal, the man who drew the map. Riggs picked it up. The pages were mostly pulp, the ink a blurry mess. But the last page was horribly clear. It wasn't a sentence. It wasn't a warning. It was just one word, scrawled over and over, the pencil having torn through the paper. Listen, 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 listen. As Riggs read the word, a sound cut through the jungle, a low hum. It wasn't insects, it wasn't the wind. It was something else, a deep vibration that seemed to come from the ground itself, traveling up through the soles of their boots and into their bones. It was a sound that felt ancient and wrong. The men froze, their blood running cold. Thorn snatched the journal from Riggs. Nonsense! It's the river, the acoustics! But his hands were shaking. And then Diaz, the man who saw the figure on the shore, started laughing, a high, unhinged giggle that turned into a chant. Listen, listen, he hears it too, Diaz giggled, pointing a shaking finger at Thorn. The map told him to listen. Thorn stood frozen, his eyes wide, the mask of command finally shattered, revealing only pure terror beneath. The descent was over. They had hit the bottom. The humming intensified. It wasn't just in their bones anymore. It was inside their skulls, a pressure behind their eyes. Diaz's laughter stopped. He just stood there, smiling at Thorn, a thin line of drool on his chin. Riggs moved first. He was a machine of cold logic in a world of screaming chaos. He walked to Diaz, his steps sure and heavy on the muddy ground. He didn't speak. He just raised his rifle butt and brought it down hard on the side of Diaz's head. The man crumpled without a sound. A collective gasp went through the men. Thorn flinched as if he'd been the one struck. "What are you doing, Riggs?" Thorn stammered, his voice a pathetic squeak. Riggs turned, his face calm, his eyes dead. Ending the noise. He racked the slide on his rifle. The sound was deafening. It broke the spell. "This is over, Thorn." Thorn tried to puff out his chest, to find the commander inside himself. It wasn't there. "I am in command here. You will be court-martialed for this." "For what?" Riggs shot back, his voice like cracking ice. "For stopping a madman from leading us to our death? Your map is a lie. Your shortcut is a grave. Martinez is dead. Diaz is broken. We are starving. For what? For your glory?" He took a step closer to Thorn. The other men shifted, their weight moving from one foot to the other, creating a circle, a fighting pit. "There is no lost city," Riggs said, his voice dropping to a low growl. "There is only this jungle, and it is eating us alive because of you." Thorn held up the cursed map, his hands trembling violently. "You're wrong. We are close. The sound, the prospector wrote, 'Listen.' It's a guide. It's leading us." Riggs laughed, a short, bitter, humorless sound. "It's leading us to the same place it led him, to a shallow grave and a journal full of nonsense." He turned to the remaining men. Their eyes were hollow, desperate, looking for a leader, any leader. "I am walking out of here," Riggs announced. "I'm going back the way we came. We'll take the last of the food and the boat. We will move slow. We might make it." He looked at Thorn. "He can stay here and listen." A soldier named Garcia, a man loyal to the uniform, raised his rifle. It was pointed at Riggs's chest. "That's mutiny, Riggs. Put the weapon down." Before Garcia finished the sentence, another rifle was up, pointed at him. It was held by a gaunt man who had been silent for days. "Put it down yourself, Garcia. I'm not dying for a piece of paper." The camp was split. 2 rifles aimed. The jungle held its breath. The low hum was the only sound. Thorn saw his chance. "He's a traitor! Arrest him!" But no one moved. They just watched the 2 rifles, the 2 men representing the 2 choices: die by the rules or live by breaking them. Riggs never took his eyes off Thorn. There are no more rules here. There is only survival. He gestured with his head to the crates of camera equipment. Break them open, take the film out, fill the canisters with water. Then he looked at the men who still hesitated. Anyone who stays with him is already dead. He will feed you to his ghosts. The standoff broke. The silent man lowered his rifle slightly. Garcia, seeing he was alone, slowly lowered his. The mutiny was complete. It wasn't a battle. It was an abdication. Men scrambled to the crates, prying them open with knives and bayonets. They worked with a frantic energy, a desperate hope. They were no longer soldiers on a mission. They were scavengers. Thorn just watched, his face a mask of disbelief. You can't just leave. Riggs and 4 other men had gathered the last of the dried meat and the medical kit. They looked like skeletons, but their eyes had a flicker of life again. "Watch us," Riggs said. He turned and walked away from the camp, back towards the river, back towards the impossible journey home. His 4 followers fell in behind him without a word. The others remained, 5 of them. They stayed with Thorn, not out of loyalty, but out of fear or madness. They were too broken to move. They watched Riggs's group disappear into the thick green walls of the jungle. Thorn stood clutching his map, listening to the hum. He was a king of a tiny, dying kingdom. 2 groups, one walking towards a sliver of hope, the other staying to embrace the madness. The jungle didn't care. It was ready to swallow them both. For Riggs's group, the journey back was a silent, desperate march through a green hell. They stopped speaking. The sound of their own voices felt like a betrayal, an invitation for the jungle to notice them. Hope was a weak flame, and every step was a suffocating darkness trying to snuff it out. Paranoia became their new commander. Every rustle of a leaf wasn't a jaguar. It was the man walking behind you, judging your weakness, counting your breaths. On the second day, a man named Jensen didn't collapse. He just sat down. He leaned his back against the thick root of a kapok tree and said, "I'm done." His eyes were vacant. The other men stared, their faces gaunt, their thoughts transparent. "He's dead weight. He's a drain on our water." Riggs knelt, felt for a pulse. It was a weak, thready flutter. He looked at the other 3 men. Their eyes were like stones. "We take his water," Riggs said, his voice a dry rasp. No one argued. They didn't even say goodbye. They just took the canteen and left him there, a living sacrifice to their own dwindling chance of survival. A week later, only Riggs and 1 other man, Cole, were left. They were walking skeletons, held together by sheer will. They hadn't eaten in 3 days. Then, through the trees, they saw it, the main channel of the river. Salvation. But it was wide, the current a churning brown muscle. They began building a raft, their hands weak, clumsy, tying logs with vines that kept snapping. The last piece of rope became the breaking point. Cole lunged for it. "It needs to be stronger here," he yelled, his voice raw with desperation. Riggs pulled it back. "We don't have time." They wrestled in the mud, 2 dying men fighting over a ghost of a chance. When they finally pushed the flimsy raft into the water, it held for a moment. Then the current seized it. A log broke free. Cole was swept away, his scream swallowed by the river in less than a second. Riggs clung to the wreckage, making it to the far bank. He was alone. He crawled for what felt like days. In his final moments, the hunger and exhaustion brought visions. He started hearing it, the hum, faint at first, then a roar inside his skull. He saw faces in the water, Martinez, Thorn, Cole. They were beckoning him. He closed his eyes, and the jungle finally grew quiet. Back at the camp, Thorn's group descended into a different, more intimate hell. The humming never stopped. It became a physical force, making their teeth ache and their vision blur at the edges. The green of the jungle seemed to pulse in time with the sound. Thorn was its high priest. He would lay the prospector's map on a flat rock and speak to it, caress it. "They didn't understand your beauty," he'd coo, tracing the ink lines with a trembling finger. "But we do. We will listen." The men didn't eat, they didn't sleep, they just listened. One morning, Garcia, the loyalist, was gone. They found him an hour later, standing waist-deep in the swamp, staring directly at the sun, a beatific smile on his face as he slowly sank into the black mud. He never cried for help. He was welcoming it. Soon, it was just Thorne and one other soldier, a terrified private named Bell. Bell made a run for it. He didn't get 10 feet before Thorne, moving with a speed Bell didn't think possible, tackled him, slamming him to the ground. "You can't leave!" Thorne shrieked, his face inches from Bell's, spittle flying from his lips. "It's a gift! The jungle has chosen us! You can't refuse a gift!" Bell stopped fighting. He just lay there, weeping, as Thorne dragged him back to the camp like a prize. Months later, a different expedition found the boat. It was adrift, tangled in vines miles from where it was abandoned. The recovery team said it felt like a tomb. Vines had punched through the wooden deck. A fine green powder and aggressive mold coated every surface except one, the map. It sat on the commander's chair, perfectly preserved, as if the jungle itself refused to touch it. They found the ship's log. The final entry was not written by Thorne. It was Bell's terrified scrawl, the pencil strokes deep and frantic. The commander talks to the trees. He calls the sound the conductor. Says it's music. My head is splitting. He's watching me write this. He says we belong to it now. God help me. There were no bodies, no blood, no signs of a struggle. All 20 men were gone. Riggs's party, Thorne's party, it didn't matter. The jungle had erased them. They were just names on a list of the missing. A ghost story whispered by locals, a mystery with no answer. In the end, who made the right choice? Riggs, the mutineer who chose a logical, brutal retreat into a slow death? Or Thorne, the commander who followed his ambition into a swift, ecstatic madness? Whose side were you on? Let me know in the comments below. The truth is, once the jungle had them, there were no right choices left, only different ways to be consumed. If you want to explore more cases where the line between survival and madness disappears, make sure you subscribe to the channel. You won't want to miss what we uncover next.